Keep my Ferrari. Just don't let go of my hand." A powerful CEO whispered it in front of everyone, and the broke single dad she clung to froze. Because in that moment, the truth about who really needed saving flipped the whole room upside down. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun had barely risen when Ethan Miller's phone buzzed with an unwelcome message. The school bus was canceled due to mechanical issues. He ran his hand through his disheveled hair, knowing this meant a rush change to their morning routine. "Lily," he called up the stairs. "Change of plans, sweetie. I've got to drive you today." His 8-year-old daughter appeared at the top of the stairs, her backpack already on, and her lunchbox clutched tightly in her small hands. "But Daddy, you'll be late for work." "Don't worry about that," Ethan said, grabbing his worn leather jacket from the hook by the door. "Mr. Johnson knows I'm a single dad. He'll understand." The old pickup truck sat in their driveway, its faded blue paint telling stories of years of faithful service. Ethan helped Lily climb into the passenger seat, making sure her seatbelt was secure before jogging around to the driver's side. "Did you remember your science project?" he asked, turning the key. The engine coughed twice before rumbling to life. Lily patted her backpack. "Right here, Miss Thompson said it might win first place." Pride swelled in Ethan's chest as he backed out of the driveway. His daughter's volcano project had taken 3 evenings to perfect, and he'd helped her paint the papier-mâché mountain with careful detail. These were the moments he treasured most. Simple times when he could just be there for his little girl. The morning traffic was heavier than usual, probably due to other parents dealing with the same bus situation. Ethan checked his watch and pressed the gas a little harder. They approached the 4-way intersection near Palmer Street, the sun glaring off the windshield. "Green light," Ethan muttered to himself, accelerating through the intersection. A flash of crimson caught his eye too late. A Ferrari, sleek and brilliant red, shot out from the right side. Ethan's heart jumped into his throat as he slammed on the brakes. The pickup's tires screeched against the asphalt, and Lily's science project tumbled from her backpack. The Ferrari stopped just inches from their truck, its engine purring like an angry cat. Behind the wheel sat a woman with striking features, her expression a mixture of shock and annoyance. She wore a tailored business suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly income. "Oh my gosh," Lily whispered, her eyes wide. "Daddy, that's Miranda Steele. I saw her on TV." Ethan's stomach dropped. Of course, Miranda Steele, CEO of Steele Motors, one of the biggest luxury car manufacturers in the country. He'd fixed enough expensive cars to recognize her from magazine covers and news reports. Miranda Steele rolled down her window, her perfectly manicured hand gripping the steering wheel. "That was a yellow light," she called out, her voice sharp but controlled. "It was green on my end," Ethan responded firmly, though his heart was still racing. He wasn't about to back down, even to a CEO. "Maybe check your speed next time?" Miranda's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, Lily leaned across her father and waved enthusiastically. "Your car is so pretty! It's the color of Christmas!" The simple innocence of Lily's comment seemed to catch Miranda off guard. Her stern expression softened slightly, and something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or remembrance. "Thank you," Miranda replied, her tone gentler now. "It's a special edition. Are you okay? Both of you?" "We're fine," Ethan said, his voice still tight. "Just trying to get to school on time since the bus was canceled." Miranda glanced at her dashboard clock, then back at Lily's eager face. For a moment, she seemed to be somewhere else, lost in thought. Then she straightened her shoulders, resuming her CEO posture. "Well, please be more careful," she said, though the edge had left her voice. "These intersections can be tricky." Lily waved again as Miranda's Ferrari glided forward, its engine humming smoothly as it disappeared around the corner. Ethan released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That was awesome," Lily exclaimed, gathering up her fallen project. "Did you see her car, Daddy? And her fancy clothes? She looked just like a princess." "A princess who needs to follow traffic signals," Ethan muttered, but he couldn't help smiling at his daughter's enthusiasm. He checked the volcano project for damage. Thankfully, it was intact. The rest of the drive to school was uneventful, but Lily couldn't stop talking about the encounter. "Maybe she'll come to your garage someday," she said hopefully as they pulled up to the school entrance. "You could fix her pretty red car," Ethan chuckled, helping her out of the truck. "I don't think CEOs bring their Ferraris to small-town mechanics, sweetheart. They probably have special dealers for that." "But you're the best mechanic ever," Lily insisted, hugging him tightly. "You fix everything." "Almost everything," Ethan said softly, kissing the top of her head. "Have a great day at school. Make that volcano explode." He watched as Lily skipped up the school steps, her backpack bouncing with each step. Other parents walked past him, heading back to their newer, cleaner cars. Ethan climbed back into his trusty pickup, shaking his head at the morning's strange encounter. Several blocks away, Miranda Steele sat at a red light, her manicured fingers drumming against the Ferrari's steering wheel. The morning sun caught the diamond rings on her hand, but her thoughts weren't on the jewelry or her upcoming board meeting. Instead, she found herself thinking about the little girl's wave and the protective way the mechanic had looked at his daughter. Something about their interaction had stirred a memory, a feeling she thought she'd left behind long ago. The light turned green, and Miranda accelerated smoothly, pushing the thoughts away. She had a company to run, after all, but the unsettled feeling lingered, like a song she couldn't quite remember but couldn't forget either. The evening air carried a hint of autumn as Ethan straightened his borrowed black vest. The charity gala's parking lot glittered with luxury cars, each worth more than his house. He'd jumped at the chance to work as a valet. The extra pay would help cover Lily's upcoming school science trip. "Remember, Thompson," his supervisor barked, "these people tip well if you treat their babies right." He gestured to the row of gleaming vehicles. "Yes, sir," Ethan replied, though his thoughts drifted to his own baby, Lily, staying with Mrs. Peterson next door. The elderly neighbor had practically become family since his wife's passing, always ready to watch Lily when he picked up extra work. A familiar engine sound made his head snap up. The crimson Ferrari from this morning purred into view, its headlights cutting through the growing darkness. Ethan's stomach tightened as Miranda Steele emerged, wearing a stunning black evening gown that probably cost more than his annual salary. Their eyes met. Recognition flickered across her face, followed by something that might have been amusement. She held out her keys, dangling them from perfectly manicured fingers. "Well," she said, her voice carrying that same controlled tone from this morning, "I trust you'll be more careful with it than at the intersection?" Ethan felt heat rise in his neck. "Yes, ma'am, though I still maintain that light was green." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "How's your daughter? The volcano project?" "She won first place," he answered, surprised she remembered. "Thank you for asking." Miranda nodded, her expression softening for a moment before she turned toward the grand entrance. Ethan watched her go, then carefully drove her Ferrari to its designated spot, treating it with the same gentle attention he gave to all vehicles in his care. The next few hours passed in a blur of expensive cars and practiced politeness. Through the large windows, Ethan could see the gala in full swing. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above crowds of wealthy donors discussing business deals over champagne. During one of his breaks, he noticed a commotion inside. Miranda stood near the center of the room, surrounded by men in expensive suits. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes. "Question your recent decisions," one man was saying, his voice carrying through the open door. "The board expects certain standards." "Standards like what, Charles?" Miranda's voice cut through the tension. "Maintaining the old boys club?" More whispers rippled through the crowd. Ethan saw Miranda's shoulders tense, though her face remained composed. The men around her seemed to close in, like sharks circling their prey. Suddenly, Miranda turned. Her eyes found Ethan through the window, and something shifted in her expression. She strode toward the door with purpose, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Ethan instinctively straightened as she approached. The watching crowd fell silent. Without warning, Miranda reached for his hand. Her fingers were warm as they wrapped around his, and she leaned close, so close he could smell her expensive perfume. "Keep my Ferrari," she whispered, her breath tickling his ear. "Just don't let go of my hand." Camera flashes exploded around them. Ethan stood frozen, feeling the weight of hundreds of stares. Miranda's hand squeezed his gently, and he realized she was trembling slightly despite her confident pose. The room buzzed with shocked conversations. The men who had been pressuring Miranda moments ago now looked unsure, their superiority deflated by this unexpected move. "Miss Steele," someone called out, "are you in the valet?" But Miranda simply smiled, a practiced expression that revealed nothing. She held onto Ethan's hand for another long moment before releasing it. "Thank you," she murmured, so quietly only he could hear. Then she turned and walked back into the crowd, which parted before her like a sea. Ethan's hand tingled where she had held it. He returned to his post, mind spinning, aware of the curious glances and whispered conversations that followed him. The rest of his shift passed in a daze. When the gala finally ended, Miranda had already left in another car with her assistant, leaving instructions for her Ferrari to be delivered to her office tomorrow. Ethan's supervisor handed him an envelope with his pay, plus an extra tip that made his eyes widen. The streets were quiet as he drove home in his pickup. His thoughts kept returning to that moment, the warmth of Miranda's hand, the flash of cameras, the look of satisfaction on her face as she walked away. What game was she playing? And why had she chosen him to be part of it? He pulled into his driveway just past midnight. Mrs. Peterson met him at the door, assuring him Lily had been an angel and had fallen asleep hours ago, clutching her science fair ribbon. Ethan found his daughter curled up in her bed, her favorite stuffed giraffe tucked under one arm. Her face was peaceful in sleep, untouched by the complications of adult lives and corporate games. He bent down and kissed her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I'll keep you safe," he whispered, carefully adjusting her blanket. "Whatever this is, I won't let it hurt you." The first-place ribbon from her volcano project hung proudly on her bedpost, swaying gently in the breeze from the open window. Such a simple joy, Ethan thought, so different from the complex world of corporate power plays he'd witnessed tonight. The morning sun crept through the dusty windows of Ethan's small kitchen as he sipped his black coffee. Lily sat across from him, happily munching on her cereal. His eyes landed on the newspaper that his neighbor had tossed onto his front porch, and his heart skipped a beat. There it was, splashed across the front page of the local section. Auto Empire CEO's Mystery Man. The photo showed him and Miranda Steele, their hands clasped together at the charity gala. His face burned hot with embarrassment. "Daddy, you're in the paper," Lily exclaimed, milk dripping down her chin as she pointed at the image. "You look nice in your uniform." Ethan quickly folded the paper. "Come on, sweetheart. Time for school." The drive to Lily's elementary school was quieter than usual. As they pulled up to the drop-off zone, Lily turned to him with big brown eyes. "Is that lady from yesterday your friend now?" "It's complicated, honey," Ethan said softly, helping her with her backpack. "Have a good day at school." When Ethan arrived at his garage, he found 3 cars already waiting outside, more than he usually saw in a whole morning. Mrs. Henderson, who'd never brought her Mercedes to him before, waved enthusiastically. "Ethan, I had no idea you were friends with Miranda Steele," she gushed. "My husband always takes our car to that fancy place downtown, but I told him, if you're good enough for the CEO of Steele Motors, you're good enough for us." The morning continued like that. Every hour brought new customers, all chattering about the photo, all wanting to know more about his connection to Miranda. Ethan kept his responses simple and focused on their cars, but the questions kept coming. "Did you meet her at a car show? Are you really dating? Can you get me a discount on a new Steele car?" By lunchtime, his small waiting room was full, and his phone wouldn't stop ringing. His one employee, Jake, was overwhelmed with the scheduling. "Boss, we're booked solid for the next 2 weeks," Jake called out from the front desk. "Never seen anything like it." Meanwhile, across town in the gleaming Steele Motors headquarters, Miranda sat in her corner office, trying to focus on quarterly reports. The buzz outside her door hadn't quieted since she arrived. Her assistant, Sarah, entered with another stack of messages. "The press office is going crazy. They want to know how to respond to the dating rumors." Miranda straightened her designer blazer, maintaining her composed exterior. "Tell them it was a strategic move to handle a difficult situation. Nothing more." But as Sarah left, Miranda found her eyes drawn to the photo on her tablet. There was something about Ethan's expression. Genuine surprise mixed with dignity. No calculation, no agenda. Just a hard-working man who'd somehow gotten tangled in her world. The memory of his calloused hand in hers lingered. It had been warm, steady, different from the manicured handshakes she was used to. Her intercom buzzed. "Miss Steele, the board members are asking for clarification about last night." At Riverside Elementary, Lily sat alone at lunch, picking at her sandwich. She could hear whispers from the other tables. "That's her, the mechanic's daughter. I heard her dad is dating the car lady from TV. My mom says he's just after her money." Tommy Parker, a boy from her class, plopped down beside her. "Is it true your dad's girlfriend is super rich? Does she drive cool cars?" "She's not his girlfriend," Lily said quietly. "They just held hands once." "Well, my dad says," Tommy started, but was cut off by Madison, one of the popular girls. "I think it's romantic," Madison declared, sitting on Lily's other side. "Like a fairy tale, the princess and the regular guy." Lily didn't know what to think. She just remembered how nice Miranda had looked in her Ferrari, and how she'd smiled at them even after they almost crashed. Back at the garage, Ethan wiped grease from his hands as the sun began to set. The day had been exhausting. More cars than he'd ever handled in one day, and more questions than he could count. The last customer, an elderly man with a pickup truck, lingered by the door. "You know, son, My wife and I have been bringing our vehicles here for years. Because you're honest, don't let all this attention change that." Ethan nodded, those words hitting him hard. As he locked up the garage, the streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows. The paper from this morning was still on his workbench, Miranda's photo catching the light. The day's events swirled in his mind. The surge of customers was good for business. Maybe he could finally afford that school trip Lily wanted to go on. Maybe even start a college fund. But the scrutiny, the questions, the gossip. He wasn't sure if he was ready for all that. His phone buzzed with another message from an unknown number asking about Miranda. Ethan sighed deeply, pocketing it without responding. The quiet of the empty garage usually brought him peace, but tonight it only amplified his confusion. Standing there in the dimness, tools hung neatly on the wall behind him. He couldn't decide if this sudden attention was a blessing or a curse. The simple life he'd built for himself and Lily seemed to be shifting, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for where it might lead. The familiar purr of a Ferrari engine made Ethan's hands freeze on the wrench he was holding. Through the open garage door, a gleaming crimson sports car pulled into his modest auto shop's parking lot. His heart raced as Miranda Steele stepped out, her designer heels clicking against the concrete. She looked different today, more approachable in dark jeans and a simple white blouse, though her perfectly styled hair and confident stride still screamed CEO. A few regular customers waiting in the small office area pressed their faces against the window, whispering excitedly. "Mr. Miller," Miranda called out with a warm smile. "I hope you can help me with a tune-up today." Ethan wiped his greasy hands on his work pants, studying her carefully. "Miss Steele, didn't expect to see you here. Please call me Miranda." She ran her hand along the Ferrari's hood. "After our encounter at the gala, I realized my car could use some expert attention. I've heard you're the best in town." Ethan's neck felt hot. He was acutely aware of his oil-stained uniform and the curious stares from his handful of waiting customers. "Look, about that night. The engine's been making an odd sound," Miranda interrupted smoothly, popping the hood. "Would you mind taking a look?" Something in her eyes told him to play along. With a small nod, he stepped forward to examine the engine. It was pristine, clearly well-maintained by top mechanics. But Miranda leaned in close, pretending to point out non-existent issues. "I meant what I said that night," she whispered, "about trusting you with my car. You have honest eyes, Ethan." He glanced at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "Ma'am, I'm just a mechanic." "No," she said firmly, "you're more than that. I've done my research. Engineering scholarship at State, top of your class before." She trailed off, clearly knowing about his wife's death. Ethan's jaw tightened. That was a different life. Miranda straightened up, speaking louder for their audience. "Well, Mr. Miller, can you help me?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am, though it might take a few hours." "Perfect." She smiled brilliantly. "I trust you completely with my baby." She turned to the watching customers. "You know, I've had this car serviced at the most exclusive shops in the country, but none of them have Mr. Miller's reputation for honesty and skill." The elderly man waiting for his oil change beamed. "Been coming to Ethan for years, best mechanic in 3 counties. Miranda chatted easily with the customers, sharing stories about her first car and asking about their families. Ethan watched in amazement as she charmed everyone in the shop. By the time she left, after insisting on paying full price despite there being nothing wrong with the Ferrari, his waiting room was packed with new customers. The afternoon flew by in a blur of oil changes, brake checks, and tune-ups. When Ethan finally closed up shop, his appointment book was full for the next 2 weeks. He counted the day's earnings twice, hardly believing the number. On his way home, he stopped at Lily's favorite Chinese restaurant. The owner, Mrs. Chen, greeted him with knowing eyes. "Saw you in paper, Mr. Miller. Very beautiful lady." Ethan blushed. "It's not what you think, Mrs. Chen." She just smiled and added extra fortune cookies to his order. At home, Lily bounced excitedly as he laid out containers of sweet and sour chicken, fried rice, and her favorite dumplings on their small kitchen table. "Special dinner?" she asked, eyes bright. "Had a good day at the shop, sweetheart." He helped her scoop rice onto her plate. "Thought we deserved a treat." "Did Miss Miranda come to see you?" Lily asked between bites. "Tommy at school said his mom saw her fancy car at the garage." Ethan paused. "She did. Just needed some work on her car. Was she nice?" Lily twirled noodles with her fork. "She looked nice in the newspaper picture. She was very professional." Ethan watched his daughter carefully. "How do you feel about all this attention, sweetie?" Lily shrugged. Some kids ask lots of questions, but Ginny said it's like a fairy tale, the princess falling in love with the regular guy. Lily, Ethan said gently, it's not like that. Miss Steele is just a customer. But she held your hand, Lily persisted, and you smiled in the picture. You don't smile like that very often, Daddy. Ethan's chest tightened. He reached across the table and squeezed her small hand. Hey, how about we crack open those fortune cookies? They spent the next hour reading fortunes and laughing at their attempts to pronounce the Chinese words printed on the back. Lily's giggles filled their small house, a sound that had been too rare lately. Later, as Ethan tucked her into bed, Lily yawned and clutched her favorite stuffed rabbit. Daddy? Yes, Princess? I think Miss Miranda held your hand because she saw you were lonely. Ethan froze in the act of pulling up her covers. What makes you say that? Because sometimes, when I see you looking at Mommy's picture, you look lonely. Lily's eyes were already closing. And Miss Miranda looked lonely too, even though she was smiling in all the pictures. The morning sun had barely peeked over the horizon when an unfamiliar black sedan pulled into Ethan's garage parking lot. Through the office window, he watched a stern-faced man in a crisp gray suit step out, clutching a leather briefcase. The man's polished shoes clicked against the concrete as he marched toward the entrance, his state inspector badge glinting in the early light. Good morning, the inspector said curtly, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. I'm Harold Weber from the State Safety Board. We've received some concerning reports about your establishment. Ethan's stomach tightened. Reports? I wasn't notified of any complaints. Anonymous tips, Mr. Miller. Weber's pen scratched against his notepad. Multiple allegations of unsafe practices and code violations. For the next 2 hours, Weber combed through every corner of the garage. He measured clearances between equipment, examined tool storage, and scrutinized the filing system. With each frown and disapproving, Ethan's anxiety grew. Your fire extinguisher inspection tags are 3 days expired, Weber announced, making another note. And these safety rails don't meet current height requirements. Those rails were approved last year, Ethan protested, running a hand through his hair. Nothing's changed. Regulations update frequently, Mr. Miller. Keeping up is your responsibility. Weber's voice dripped with condescension as he produced a thick stack of violation notices. I'm citing you for 17 infractions. You have 30 days to correct them or face closure. Ethan's hands trembled as he accepted the papers. Through the office window, he spotted Jerry Thompson's expensive SUV crawling past the garage for the third time that morning. Jerry owned the big chain auto shop across town and had been losing customers to Ethan lately. The morning dragged on in a blur of worried customers and apologetic phone calls. Ethan was reviewing the costly violation list when his phone buzzed. A text from Lily's teacher asking him to pick her up early. He found Lily sitting alone in the school office, her small shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Her favorite unicorn backpack lay crumpled at her feet. Baby, what happened? Ethan knelt beside her chair, his heart breaking at her tear-stained face. Tommy said. Lily hiccuped. He said you're only pretending to like Miss Steele because she's rich, and Madison told everyone you're trying to steal her money. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. They said we're poor and desperate. Ethan pulled her into a tight hug, feeling her tears soak into his shirt. Those kids don't know anything about us, sweetheart. But why are they being so mean? Lily's voice was muffled against his chest. Miss Miranda is nice. She helped me with my math homework. Sometimes people say cruel things when they're jealous or scared. Ethan stroked her hair, remembering the inspector's visit. But we know the truth, don't we? And that's what matters. The drive home was quiet, Lily staring out the window while Ethan's mind raced. The violation notices felt like lead weights in his pocket. The required upgrades would cost thousands. Money he didn't have. And now, Lily was suffering because of his connection to Miranda. After tucking Lily into bed with extra hugs and her favorite stuffed penguin, Ethan spread the inspection papers across the kitchen table. The lonely tick of the wall clock kept time as he worked through calculations, each sum more discouraging than the last. Numbers blurred before his eyes as midnight approached. The coffee in his mug had gone cold, untouched. Somewhere in town, Jerry Thompson was probably sleeping soundly, satisfied that his anonymous tips had hit their mark. I can't let you down, baby girl, Ethan whispered into the quiet kitchen, his fingers tracing the long column of required repairs. I promised your mom I'd give you everything you need. He glanced toward Lily's bedroom where her nightlight cast a soft glow under the door. I have to find a way. The violation notices seemed to mock him under the harsh kitchen light. Expired certificates, Outdated equipment, improper ventilation. Each line item represented another blow to the business he'd built from nothing, the legacy he wanted to leave his daughter. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Ethan stood at the counter of the state inspector's office. His work-worn hands gripped a stack of violation notices, each one feeling heavier than the last. The clerk behind the desk typed away, barely looking up at him. "Ma'am, these violations don't make any sense," Ethan said, keeping his voice steady despite his frustration. "I've been running that garage for 8 years. We've never had a single safety issue." The clerk finally met his eyes, her expression blank. "The complaint came from a reliable business competitor, Mr. Miller. We take such reports very seriously." "A competitor?" Ethan's stomach tightened. "Who? That information is confidential." She turned back to her computer screen. "You have 30 days to address the violations or face closure." Across town, in a gleaming corporate office 40 stories up, Miranda Steele sat at the head of a long mahogany table. 6 board members stared back at her, their faces etched with disapproval. "Miss Steele," drawled Richard Henderson, the eldest board member, "these tabloid headlines are becoming problematic. A CEO consorting with a mechanic?" He slid a newspaper across the table. "Our shareholders are concerned about your judgment." Miranda's fingers tightened around her pen, but her voice remained calm. "My personal associations are not up for discussion, Richard. They are when they affect stock prices," another member chimed in. "The luxury car market is built on image. We can't have our CEO looking common." The word common hit Miranda like a slap. She thought of Ethan's honest eyes, his gentle way with Lily, the quiet dignity in how he worked. There was nothing common about him at all. Back at his garage, Ethan methodically went through each violation notice. Some were ridiculous. A crack in a sidewalk that had been there for decades. A perfectly functional ventilation system suddenly deemed suspicious. His phone buzzed with a text from Miranda. "Board meeting today. Rough. Can we talk?" Before he could reply, the bell above the door chimed. Tommy Fletcher, owner of the largest auto repair chain in town, sauntered in. His expensive leather shoes clicked on the concrete floor. "Quite a mess you've got here, Miller," Tommy said, looking around with exaggerated concern. "Shame about those violations. But hey, I might be willing to take this place off your hands. Save you the headache of fixing everything up." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Not interested, Tommy." "No?" Tommy's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Think about it. Small shops like yours, they're dying anyway, especially ones with safety issues." After Tommy left, Ethan sat heavily in his office chair, the pieces falling into place. The reliable business competitor. It had to be Tommy, trying to force him out now that his shop was getting attention. The day dragged on, each hour bringing new worries. When Ethan finally got home, he found Lily at the kitchen table, homework spread out before her. The sight of her brought both comfort and anxiety. Everything he did was for her future. "Daddy?" Lily looked up from her math worksheet. "Is Miranda coming over again? She helps me understand fractions better than anyone." Ethan's heart squeezed. He busied himself with getting dinner ready, pulling out leftover lasagna from the fridge. "Not tonight, sweetie, but she promised to show me pictures of Italy. She said they have buildings older than America there." The excitement in Lily's voice made this harder. Ethan set the plate in front of her, trying to find the right words. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated things to deal with, honey. Is it because of what Tommy's daughter said at school? About you only pretending to be Miranda's friend for money? Ethan froze. "What?" She told everyone her dad said you were trying to trick Miranda. Lily pushed her food around with her fork. "But that's not true, right? Miranda likes us for real." The simple faith in her voice nearly broke him. "Of course it's not true," he said softly. "But sometimes people from different worlds have trouble understanding each other." After dinner and homework, after tucking Lily in with her favorite stuffed elephant, Ethan went out to lock up the garage for the night. Miranda's Ferrari sat in the corner, its crimson paint gleaming under the security lights. He'd been keeping it safe for her, working on it when he could. Running his hand along its smooth hood, Ethan thought about how this car had started everything. Their near collision, the gala, that moment when she'd grabbed his hand. Now here they were, both facing consequences for a friendship that crossed invisible lines. The Ferrari's polish reflected his tired face back at him. In it, he saw a man caught between worlds, not quite fitting in either anymore. His phone buzzed again with another message from Miranda, but he couldn't bring himself to read it. The security light flickered overhead, casting shifting shadows across the garage floor. Ethan stood there, keys heavy in his hand, wondering if their chance meeting had set off a chain reaction that would end up hurting everyone he cared about. The Ferrari gleamed silently, a beautiful reminder of how complicated life had become. He thought about Lily's hopeful face when she asked about Miranda, about the warmth in Miranda's eyes when she helped with homework, about Tommy's threats and the board's judgment. Two worlds colliding. His simple, honest life of hard work and single fatherhood, and Miranda's world of corporate power and luxury. With a deep sigh, Ethan clicked the last lock into place. The garage door rumbled shut, leaving him alone in the parking lot with his thoughts and Miranda's Ferrari, a symbol of everything that now hung in the balance. The bell above the garage door chimed, and Ethan looked up from under the hood of a beaten-up Volkswagen. His eyes widened at the sight before him. Miranda Steele, the usually immaculate CEO, stood in worn jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. If not for those striking green eyes, he might not have recognized her. "I thought I'd try something different today," she said, gesturing at her outfit with a small smile. Her designer handbag was nowhere in sight, replaced by a simple canvas tote. Ethan wiped his hands on a shop rag. "Almost didn't recognize you without the power suit." "That's kind of the point." Miranda glanced around the empty garage. "Mind if I hide out here for a while?" He nodded toward the small break room. "Coffee's fresh, just made it." The break room was nothing special, just a small table, a few chairs, and a coffee maker that had seen better days. But Miranda sank into one of the chairs like it was the most comfortable seat she'd ever found. Ethan poured 2 cups of coffee in mismatched mugs. One had a faded "World's Best Dad" printed on it, clearly a gift from Lily. He set them down and pulled up a chair. "No fancy Italian roast," he said. "Just regular coffee. It's perfect." Miranda wrapped her hands around the warm mug. Her shoulders, usually squared with corporate confidence, seemed to drop an inch. "You have no idea how nice it is to just sit." "Rough day?" She let out a long breath. "Rough month. Board meetings, shareholder drama, endless PR campaigns." Her fingers traced the rim of her mug. "Everyone wants something. Everyone needs answers. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in expectations." The afternoon sun filtered through the dusty window, casting warm shadows across her face. For the first time, Ethan noticed the tired lines around her eyes, usually hidden beneath perfect makeup. "You know what I miss?" she continued, staring into her coffee. "Being invisible. Just being me. Not Miranda Steele, CEO of Steele Motors. Just Miranda." Ethan nodded, understanding more than she might have expected. Sometimes the simplest things are what we need most. The sound of the school bus squeaking to a stop outside broke their quiet moment. Minutes later, Lily burst through the door, her backpack bouncing. "Miranda!" she exclaimed, her face lighting up. Then she frowned at her math worksheet. "Oh no, I have fractions today." Miranda's entire demeanor shifted, softening as she turned to Lily. "Want some help? I used to be pretty good at those." They cleared a space on the break room table, pushing aside old maintenance manuals. Ethan watched as Miranda patiently explained numerators and denominators, using car parts as examples. "See, if we split this wheel into 4 equal parts, that's our denominator," Miranda explained, sketching on the back of Lily's worksheet. "And if we color in 3 of those parts, that's 3/4." Lily exclaimed, bouncing in her seat. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, something warm and unexpected spreading in his chest. Miranda's laugh was different here, lighter, more real than the polished chuckle he'd heard at the gala. And Lily. He hadn't seen her this excited about homework in months. The afternoon light grew golden as they worked through the problems. Miranda showed Lily tricks for remembering multiplication tables, their heads bent together over the paper. Every now and then, they'd break into giggles over some shared joke. Finally, Lily closed her notebook with a triumphant smile. "All done, and I actually understand it now." "You're a natural," Miranda said, giving her a high five. "Those fractions didn't stand a chance." As Miranda gathered her things to leave, Lily wrapped her arms around her in an impulsive hug. Miranda froze for a moment, then melted into the embrace. "You smell like Mommy's perfume," Lily whispered. The words hung in the air. Ethan stood completely still, his throat tight with sudden emotion. Miranda's eyes met his over Lily's head, filled with a mixture of surprise and something deeper he couldn't name. For once in his life, Ethan Miller had absolutely no words. The invitation arrived on thick, cream-colored paper, gold letters gleaming under the fluorescent lights of Ethan's garage office. His grease-stained fingers left tiny smudges on the corners as he read it twice, barely believing the words. "What's that, Daddy?" Lily peered over his arm, her eyes widening at the fancy writing. Miranda. She wants me to come to some big company party, Ethan muttered, his stomach already nodding. The thought of entering that world, Miranda's world of wealth and power, made his palms sweat. 2 days later, he stood before his bedroom mirror, tugging uncomfortably at the borrowed suit from his neighbor Tom. The jacket pulled tight across his shoulders, and the pants were a touch too short. Lily sat on his bed, swinging her legs and beaming. "You look handsome, Daddy, like a prince." Ethan forced a smile, though his reflection showed a man who looked more like a kid playing dress-up. "Thanks, sweetie. Remember to be good for Mrs. Jensen tonight, okay?" The drive to the Steel Motors headquarters felt endless. The massive glass building stretched toward the sky, its windows reflecting the setting sun like mirrors. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway, each one worth more than his garage's yearly income. Inside the lobby, classical music floated through the air. Men in perfectly tailored suits and women in designer dresses mingled, their laughter echoing off marble floors. Ethan's borrowed shoes squeaked with each step. "Ethan!" Miranda's voice cut through his anxiety. She glided toward him in a deep blue evening gown, but it was her warm smile that caught his attention. "I'm so glad you came." "Thanks for inviting me," he managed, trying not to fidget. "Though I feel a bit like a fish out of water." "Nonsense." She linked her arm through his, leading him deeper into the crowd. "You belong here as much as anyone." But the whispers followed them. Ethan caught fragments of conversations, saw the raised eyebrows and smirks. A group of board members huddled near a marble column, their disapproving glances obvious. "Miranda," one of them called out, his voice dripping with false warmth. "Shouldn't you be discussing the quarterly projections with the shareholders?" "Of course, Charles." Miranda's grip on Ethan's arm tightened slightly. "But first, I'd like you to meet Ethan Miller." Charles's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Ah yes, the mechanic. The man with integrity money can't buy," Miranda corrected firmly. Her voice carried across the nearby crowd, turning heads. While some chase profits at any cost, Ethan builds trust with every customer. His small garage has a waiting list because people know he'll never compromise his values. Heat crept up Ethan's neck, but he stood straighter. In that moment, hearing the pride in Miranda's voice, his ill-fitting suit mattered less. The evening continued in a blur of introductions and conversations. Miranda never left his side, smoothly, including him in discussions, asking his opinion on various matters. When technical questions about cars came up, Ethan found himself speaking with growing confidence. "The new hybrid system you're developing," he said to a group of engineers. "It's innovative, but have you considered the maintenance challenges for everyday mechanics?" Their surprised looks turned to genuine interest as he explained the practical concerns he'd seen in his garage. Soon, they were huddled around him, scribbling notes on cocktail napkins. As the crowd thinned and the music softened, Miranda touched his elbow. "Ready to go?" The night air felt cool and fresh after the stuffiness of the gala. Miranda's Ferrari purred to life, but instead of heading straight home, she took a winding route through quiet streets. "Thank you," she said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "For coming tonight. For being yourself." Ethan watched the streetlights play across her face. Gone was the polished CEO mask she wore inside. Here, in the gentle darkness of her car, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "You know," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "I haven't felt this free in decades. All those people in there, they see me as a balance sheet, a stock price. But you," she glanced at him, "you just see me." Ethan didn't respond, but as their eyes met briefly in the dim car interior, his gaze held all the understanding words couldn't express. He saw past the wealth and titles to the woman who helped his daughter with homework and laughed at his bad jokes. The woman who stood up to her board members to defend a simple mechanic's honor. The Ferrari glided through the empty streets, carrying them between their two different worlds that somehow, tonight, felt a little closer together. The whispers started small, like fallen leaves skittering across the cracked sidewalks of Pine Grove Street. Ethan noticed them first at Joe's coffee shop, where he'd been getting his morning brew for the past 5 years. The usual warm greetings turned into short nods, and conversations died when he walked in. "Guess some folks are too good for Maxwell House these days," muttered Pete Harrison, who'd been Ethan's regular customer since he'd opened the garage. "Probably drinks fancy lattes now." Ethan kept his head down, paid for his coffee, and left without a word. The paper cup burned against his palm, but the ache in his chest burned harder. At the garage, business was steady, but different. His old regulars, the teachers, factory workers, and retail clerks who'd trusted him with their cars for years were being replaced by shiny SUVs and luxury sedans. Their owners had seen him in the society pages with Miranda and decided he must be the best in town. "Daddy?" Lily's voice pulled him from under the hood of a Mercedes. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan wiped his hands on a rag and knelt to her level. "Always, sweetheart." "Why did Mrs. Thompson call me the Ferrari girl at the grocery store?" Her blue eyes, so like her mother's, were clouded with confusion. "She used to call me Lilybug." The wrench in Ethan's toolbox suddenly felt heavier than usual. He'd noticed Sarah Thompson, their neighbor of 6 years, hurrying her kids across the street when Lily played in their front yard. "Some people," he started, choosing his words carefully, "don't understand that we can have new friends and still be ourselves." That evening, while closing up the garage, his old friend Mike Bradley stopped by. They'd gone to high school together, worked summer jobs at the same hardware store, but today, Mike's familiar face wore an unfamiliar expression. "Heard you were at some fancy party last night," Mike said, leaning against the garage door. "With that CEO lady." "It was just a work thing," Ethan replied, organizing his tools with extra care. "Work thing? Since when did fixing cars mean wearing tuxedos?" Mike's laugh had an edge to it. "Remember when we used to make fun of those country club types? Now you're becoming one of them." "I haven't changed, Mike. I'm still just a mechanic." "Are you?" "Because the Ethan Miller I knew wouldn't be playing dress-up with millionaires." Mike pushed off the doorframe. "Just don't forget where you came from, buddy. Those people up there, they'll never really accept you." The words followed Ethan home, echoing in his mind as he made dinner. Mac and cheese, Lily's favorite, from the same blue box his mom used to buy. Nothing fancy about that. Later, as they sat on their worn couch watching TV, Lily curled against his side. "Jessica, at school said we're going to move to a mansion soon," she mentioned quietly. "Are we?" Ethan's heart clenched. "No, sweetheart, this is our home." "Good," Lily said, hugging her stuffed rabbit closer. "I like our house. It smells like Mom's flowers." At bedtime, Lily asked for a story about her mother, as she often did. Ethan sat on the edge of her small bed, surrounded by the glow in the dark stars they'd stuck on her ceiling together. "Your mom?" he began, smoothing her covers. "Loved this little house more than any mansion in the world. When we first bought it, it needed lots of work. The paint was peeling, and the kitchen sink leaked." Lily snuggled deeper under her blanket. "Did Mom fix it?" "She sure tried." Ethan smiled at the memory. She watched YouTube videos about home repair and borrowed tools from neighbors. Sometimes things worked, sometimes they didn't. But she never gave up. "Like when you teach me about cars?" "Exactly like that. Your mom believed that what matters isn't how fancy something is, but how much love you put into it." He touched the small, heart-shaped locket around Lily's neck, her mother's last gift. "She used to say our home was perfect because it was filled with love, not things." Lily's eyes were getting heavy, but she fought sleep to ask one more question. "Would Mom like Miranda?" Ethan paused, thinking of his late wife's generous heart. "I think she would. Your mom could see the good in everyone, just like you can." "Promise we'll always stay here, Daddy, in our love-filled house?" "I promise, sweetheart." He kissed her forehead. "We'll always stay true to who we are. We're Millers. We fix things. We work hard, and we keep our promises." As Lily drifted off to sleep, Ethan remained seated on her bed, watching the plastic stars cast their gentle glow. On her dresser sat a photo of his wife, smiling in their backyard, surrounded by the rose bushes she'd planted. The roses still bloomed every spring, stubborn and beautiful, just like she had been. He thought about Miranda, about the way she'd stood up for him at the gala, and about Mike's words at the garage. Two worlds pulling at him, like opposite ends of a magnet. But looking at his sleeping daughter, at the home he and his wife had built with love and sweat and hope, he knew his true north. They were Millers. They didn't need mansions or fancy parties. They had something better. They had each other, their memories, and their integrity. And no amount of whispers or sideways glances could change that truth. The gleaming convention center stretched before them like a glass castle. Lily pressed her face against the truck's window, her eyes wide at the sight of the towering building with its modern curves and endless windows. Ethan adjusted his tie for the 100th time, still not used to wearing one. "Are you nervous, Daddy?" Lily asked, smoothing her new blue dress. "A little, pumpkin." Ethan managed to smile as he parked his old pickup truck between two luxury sedans. "But sometimes being nervous means something important is about to happen." The convention center lobby buzzed with activity. Men and women in expensive suits moved through the space like a choreographed dance. Ethan felt out of place until he spotted Miranda waiting for them near the entrance. She wore a crimson blazer that matched her famous Ferrari, but her smile was warm and genuine. "You made it!" Miranda hurried over, bending down to hug Lily first. "And don't you look beautiful in that dress?" Lily twirled, beaming. "Miranda, are you going to talk about cars today? Something even more important than cars," Miranda winked, straightening up to squeeze Ethan's hand. "I'm talking about people." Inside the main hall, rows of seats faced a massive stage. Screens larger than billboards hung overhead, currently showing the Steel Motors logo. Ethan noticed some board members giving them sidelong glances, but Miranda kept her head high. "Front row," she gestured to 3 reserved seats. "I want you both close." As they settled in, the hall filled quickly. Ethan recognized faces from business magazines and news reports. These were the power players of the automotive world, gathered to hear Miranda's vision for the company's future. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. Miranda took the stage with the confidence of someone born to command attention. But Ethan noticed something different in her stance today, a gentleness that hadn't been there before. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice carried clearly through the hall, "we've built our reputation on luxury, on exclusivity, on being above the ordinary." She paused, looking directly at Ethan and Lily. "But somewhere along the way we forgot what drives us." The screens behind her lit up with images, not of sleek sports cars, but of families, workers, everyday people with their vehicles. "Recently, I met someone who reminded me what matters most in this industry. Not the chrome or the horsepower, but the trust people place in us to carry their most precious cargo, their loved ones." Ethan felt Lily's small hand slip into his as Miranda continued. "In Pine Grove, there's a mechanic who understands this better than anyone. He treats every car that enters his garage, not as a machine, but as a vessel of someone's hopes, dreams, and responsibilities." Miranda's voice softened. "Ethan Miller taught me that true luxury isn't about leather seats or premium sound systems. It's about the peace of mind knowing your child will get to school safely. It's about the dignity of honest work and the pride of helping others." The screen showed images of Ethan's garage, of him working on cars, teaching his apprentices. He hadn't even noticed when these were taken. "Today, I'm proud to announce Steel Motors' new Family First line. Cars built not just for show, but for the real heroes of our economy. The single parents, the small business owners, the dreamers, who need both reliability and affordability." The curtain behind her rose, revealing a sleek but practical sedan in midnight blue. Its lines were beautiful but purposeful, clearly designed for both style and function. This is the Guardian series, inspired by authentic, hardworking families like Ethan's. Because every parent deserves to feel confident about their family's safety. Every child deserves to ride in comfort, even if their parent isn't a CEO. The crowd began to applaud, first scattered, then building to a wave. Ethan saw board members who'd once sneered at him nodding in approval. Business reporters were scribbling frantically in their notebooks. "Sometimes," Miranda continued, her voice carrying emotion now, "we need someone to remind us of our purpose, someone to show us that true value isn't measured in dollar signs, but in the trust people place in us." She gestured to where Ethan and Lily Saturday. "Ethan Miller didn't just fix my Ferrari that first day, he fixed my perspective, and for that, I'll always be grateful." The applause grew louder. Lily bounced in her seat, tugging at Ethan's sleeve with excitement. "Daddy, I think she's holding your hand forever," she whispered, her eyes shining with joy and understanding beyond her years. Miranda extended her hand toward them. "Ethan, would you join me up here?" His legs felt wooden as he stood. Lily gave him a gentle push, and he made his way to the stage. Under the bright lights, Miranda's eyes were bright with unshed tears as she took his hand. The crowd rose to their feet, applauding even louder. Camera flashes popped like stars. But all Ethan could focus on was the warmth of Miranda's hand in his, the pride in Lily's face from the front row, and the feeling that somehow, against all odds, their two worlds had found a way to fit together perfectly. On that stage, holding Miranda's hand before the cheering crowd, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the sensation of everything falling into place, of triumph not just for himself, but for every hardworking person who'd ever felt overlooked by the world of wealth and privilege. Miranda squeezed his hand tighter, and in that moment, surrounded by applause and bright lights, they weren't a CEO and a mechanic anymore. They were simply two people who'd found something real in a world of artificial appearances. The morning sun barely peeked through the clouds when Ethan's phone started buzzing nonstop. At first, he ignored it, focused on making Lily's breakfast. But when Mrs. Peterson from next door knocked frantically at his door, he knew something was wrong. "Ethan, dear, you need to see this." Her weathered hands trembled as she held out the morning paper. There, splashed across the front page in bold letters, "Gold Digger Mechanic Manipulate CO." His stomach dropped. Below the headline was a photo of him and Miranda at the conference, but somehow they'd made him look calculating, predatory even. The article was filled with anonymous sources, claiming he'd orchestrated everything from the first traffic encounter to the charity gala. "I'm so sorry," Mrs. Peterson whispered, patting his arm. Lily came bouncing down the stairs in her school uniform. "Daddy, why is Mrs. Peterson here so early?" Ethan quickly folded the paper. "Just checking in, sweetheart. Go finish your cereal." His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Tony, his morning mechanic. "Boss, you better get down here. Now." The drive to the garage was only 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. When he turned the corner, his heart stopped. Bright red letters were sprayed across the front of his building. "Thief" and "Gold Digger" in angry strokes. The windows were splattered with eggs, and someone had dumped trash all over the entrance. Tony stood there with a broom, already trying to clean up. "Called the police. They're on their way." Ethan's hands shook as he unlocked the door. Inside, the waiting room was untouched, but more papers were shoved under the door. Different tabloids, all with variations of the same story. One claimed he'd researched Miranda before their accident. Another suggested he'd paid people to spread rumors about her rivals. "Boss?" Tony's voice was gentle. "Regular customers are calling. Some are canceling their appointments." Ethan slumped into his office chair, the one he'd had since opening the garage 5 years ago. The worn leather that usually felt comforting now seemed to swallow him whole. His phone buzzed again. Miranda's number. "Ethan?" Her voice was strained. "Are you okay? I just saw—" "My garage is vandalized," he cut in, his voice hollow. "My daughter's gonna see these headlines. My neighbors. I'm so sorry. My legal team is already—" "Miss Steele?" A stern voice interrupted in the background. "The board is waiting." Miranda's breath caught. "Ethan, I have to go, but we'll fix this. I promise." The line went dead, leaving Ethan in silence. Outside, he could hear the police arriving, their radios crackling. Tony was giving a statement, describing the damage. Customers drove by slowly, some taking pictures with their phones. His cell phone kept lighting up with messages. Old friends asking if it was true. Regular customers expressing disappointment. Even Lily's school called, asking if he wanted to pick her up early due to increased media attention. Around noon, a sleek black car pulled up outside. Miranda's assistant stepped out, looking nervous. "Mr. Miller?" She clutched her tablet like a shield. "Miss Steele wanted me to update you, the board. They're in emergency session." Ethan's throat tightened. "Because of me. The articles? They're suggesting she's emotionally compromised, that she's making business decisions based on personal entanglements." The assistant shifted uncomfortably. "They're reviewing the new car line launch. Everything." The bell above the door chimed, and Miranda walked in. Her usual confident stride was gone, replaced by something heavier. Her face, usually perfectly composed, showed cracks of exhaustion and worry. "The board wants me out," she said without preamble. Unless you cut ties with me," Ethan finished, the words tasting bitter. Miranda's eyes glistened. "They're saying I've lost objectivity, that my judgment is clouded." She laughed, but it was hollow. 20 years building this company, and they think I'd throw it all away for a small-town mechanic? Ethan supplied, his voice rough. "For happiness," she corrected, reaching for his hand across the desk. But he pulled back, thinking of the spray paint outside, of Lily's face when she'd see the news. "Miss Steele," her assistant interrupted gently, "they're waiting for your decision." Miranda stood there, looking more vulnerable than Ethan had ever seen her. The polished CEO facade had crumbled, leaving just a woman who, like him, had found something real in an unexpected place. Now they were both watching it slip away. "I can't let you lose everything," Ethan said quietly. "Your company, your reputation. Ethan, you built Steel Motors from nothing. It's your life's work." He forced himself to meet her eyes. "And I have to protect Lily. She can't grow up with people calling her father. Calling me." Miranda took a step toward him, but the assistant's phone buzzed urgently. "The board is threatening to call an immediate vote," she reported anxiously. Through the window, Ethan could see more reporters arriving, their cameras ready. Some were interviewing his neighbors, probably gathering more dirt for tomorrow's headlines. The spray paint on his wall gleamed mockingly. In the midday Sunday, Miranda stood frozen between her assistant and Ethan, her usual decisiveness nowhere to be found. For the first time since he'd known her, she looked lost, torn between the empire she'd built and the unexpected happiness she'd found in his simple garage. "Miss Steele?" The assistant prompted again, her voice gentle but insistent. Miranda finally turned to face Ethan fully, her eyes filled with a pain he'd never seen before. The moment stretched between them, heavy with everything they'd shared and everything they stood to lose. All the simple moments, coffee in his break room, helping Lily with homework, laughing over engine parts, seemed to flash through the air between them. The weight of the decision pressed down on them both, as suffocating as the headlines screaming from the newspapers scattered across his desk. The sound of cameras clicking outside provided a cruel soundtrack to their heartbreak. Ethan's hands shook as he folded the morning newspaper, the cruel headlines burning in his mind. Outside his garage, the spray-painted words "thief" and "fraud" gleamed wet in the early light. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Miranda. He couldn't bring himself to read it. Inside the small office, Lily sat doing her homework, humming softly. The sight of her innocence made his chest ache. She didn't deserve any of this. The bell above the garage door chimed. Ethan's heart sank when he saw Miranda walking in, wearing simple jeans and a sweater, her face drawn with worry. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "The board meeting was awful, but we can fight this. Together." "Miranda." Ethan glanced at Lily through the office window, then led Miranda to the far corner of the garage. The smell of oil and metal hung heavy in the air. "This has to stop." "What?" "No." Miranda reached for his hand, but he stepped back. "Ethan, don't let them win like this." "Win?" His laugh was hollow. "Look around, Miranda. My garage, my life's work, is vandalized. Lily came home crying yesterday because kids at school." He swallowed hard. "They're calling her names now, too." Miranda's eyes filled with tears. "I can fix this. We'll hire security, get better lawyers." "That's exactly what I'm talking about." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. "Everything in your world gets fixed with money or power, but that's not real life. Not my life." "Our worlds aren't that different," Miranda protested. When we're together, we're living in a bubble," Ethan cut in. "A beautiful bubble, but it's not real. Your board wants you out. My neighbors think I'm a con man." "And Lily," his voice cracked. "Lily needs stability. She needs a father who can walk into her school without whispers following him." Miranda stepped closer, her usual confidence replaced by raw vulnerability. "What about what I need? What about what we've built?" "We built a fantasy," Ethan said softly. "And now reality's crashing in. You need to focus on saving your company, and I need to protect my daughter." "Lily loves me," Miranda whispered, tears now falling freely. "And I love her, and you, please." Ethan held up his hand, his own eyes glistening. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Through the office window, they could hear Lily's faint humming, the same tune her mother used to sing. The sound twisted like a knife in Ethan's heart. "You're running away," Miranda accused, her voice breaking. "You're letting fear win." "No." Ethan shook his head. "I'm choosing my daughter's peace over my own happiness. That's what parents do." Miranda stood there, her usual poise crumbling. "So that's it? After everything?" "It has to be." Ethan turned away, unable to watch her pain. "Please, stay away, for all our sakes." The garage fell silent, except for the distant sound of traffic and Lily's innocent humming. Miranda's heels clicked slowly across the concrete floor, each step echoing like thunder in Ethan's ears. The bell chimed one last time as she left. Hours later, after Lily was asleep at her grandmother's house, Ethan sat alone in his dark garage. The crimson Ferrari sat in the corner, covered in a thin layer of dust. He hadn't touched it since the headlines broke. From where he sat on his old work stool, he could just make out the word "thief" spray-painted on his garage door. Across town, in her penthouse office, Miranda stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights twinkled below, but she saw nothing but her own reflection and the empty space beside it where Ethan should have been. On her desk, a framed photo showed the three of them at the company conference, smiling, hopeful. Now it felt like a relic from another lifetime. The night stretched on, two hearts beating in different worlds, both aching with the weight of what they'd lost. The Ferrari sat covered in dust, a silent witness to their separation, while the city lights continued to shine. indifferent to the pain below. The autumn chill crept into Ethan's garage as he worked alone under the hood of an old Chevrolet. His movements were mechanical, his mind elsewhere. The wall calendar showed 3 weeks had passed since he'd last seen Miranda. 3 weeks since he'd chosen to protect his daughter by pushing away the woman who'd brought unexpected joy into their lives. "Hey, Mr. Miller!" Tommy, the teenage neighbor boy, poked his head into the garage. "Mom wanted to know if you could look at her car tomorrow." Ethan straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Sorry, Tommy. Tell her I'm pretty backed up right now." He wasn't. The truth was, his appointment book had more empty spaces than filled ones these days. Tommy shuffled his feet. "Oh, okay. She said she saw Mrs. Peterson taking her car to that new place across town." The words stung. Mrs. Peterson had been bringing her cars to Ethan for years. He forced a smile. "That's fine. Sometimes change is good." After Tommy left, Ethan stared at the crimson Ferrari still parked in the corner, covered by a gray tarp. He hadn't touched it since that day. Dust had settled on the fabric like a thin blanket of regret. The school bus rumbled to a stop outside, and moments later, Lily burst through the door, her backpack bouncing. "Daddy, we learned about butterflies today." She paused, scanning the garage. Her smile dimmed slightly. "Is Miranda coming to help with my science project?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Not today, sweetheart, but hey, I can help. I know a thing or two about science." "You always say that." Lily dropped her backpack on the office chair. "But Miranda explains things different, like how caterpillars have to be brave to change into butterflies." She looked at him with those knowing eyes that reminded him so much of her mother. "Why doesn't she visit anymore?" "It's complicated, Lilybug." Ethan busied himself with organizing tools that were already perfectly arranged. Sometimes grown-ups need space. "Did you have a fight?" "No, nothing like that." He sighed, setting down a wrench. "Sometimes people from different worlds just need to stay in their own worlds." "That's silly," Lily declared, pulling out her homework. "The Earth is just one world." Across town, in the gleaming Steel Motors corporate headquarters, Miranda sat through another tense board meeting. The faces around the mahogany table were less friendly than they'd been a month ago. Whispers followed her down hallways. Even her assistant seemed to walk on eggshells. "The Q3 numbers are concerning," Gerald Thompson, her most vocal critic on the board, was saying. "Our luxury market share has slipped 2 points since the recent publicity issues." Miranda kept her face neutral, though her fingers tightened around her pen. "The market is volatile, Gerald. You know that better than most. We're implementing new strategies." "Like consorting with small-town mechanics?" someone muttered. A few nervous chuckles rippled around the table. "That's enough." Miranda's voice cut through the room like steel. "If anyone has actual business concerns, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned." Later, in her office, she stood at the window overlooking the city. Her phone showed no new messages from Ethan. She'd stopped trying after the 10th unanswered text. Her reflection in the glass looked tired, the polished CEO facade showing cracks. "Miss Steele?" Her assistant appeared at the door. "The press is asking for comment on the resignation rumors." Miranda turned, her shoulders straight. "Tell them I have no comment. And Carol, cancel my dinner with the investors tonight. I need some air." Back at the garage, Ethan was closing up for the day. The repair bay that used to be full until closing time now echoed with emptiness. He'd had to let go of his part-time helper last week. The bills were piling up, but he'd rather work alone than admit how bad things had gotten. Lily sat at the kitchen table that evening, pushing peas around her plate. "Jenny's mom said you're too proud." Ethan nearly choked on his water. "What?" "I heard her talking to Mr. Davis at the grocery store. She said you're too proud to admit you need help." Lily stabbed a pea with her fork. "What does that mean?" "It means people talk too much about things they don't understand." Ethan's voice came out sharper than he intended. He softened it. "Don't worry about adult stuff, okay?" But later, after tucking Lily into bed, he sat at his desk looking at the month's expenses. The numbers refused to add up nicely. His savings were dwindling, and the winter months were always slower. He thought about Miranda's offer to help, the genuine concern in her eyes that last day. His pride had gotten in the way then, and maybe it still was. A small sound from upstairs made him pause. He climbed the stairs quietly and stopped outside Lily's room. The door was slightly ajar, and in the soft glow of her butterfly nightlight, he saw her kneeling beside her bed. "Dear God," she was saying, her hands clasped tightly, "please help Daddy smile again. He pretends he's okay, but I know he misses Miranda. And I miss her too." She paused, then added, "And please help Miranda not be sad anymore. Tommy's sister saw her picture in a magazine, and she looked really sad." Ethan leaned against the wall, his vision blurring. A tear rolled down his cheek, followed by another. He covered his mouth to muffle the sound of his breathing. "And God?" Lily continued, her voice getting sleepy. "If you could make Daddy less proud, that would be good too. Jenny's mom says that's why he's being silly. Amen." The simple prayer of his 8-year-old daughter cut through all his carefully constructed defenses. He slid down the wall, sitting in the darkened hallway, as silent tears fell. He'd thought he was protecting Lily by pushing Miranda away, by trying to keep their worlds separate. But maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe he'd been protecting his own heart, his own fears, while his daughter saw the truth with the clarity only a child could possess. The house felt emptier than ever, as he sat there in the dark, listening to Lily's breathing even out into sleep. On his phone, Miranda's last message still waited, unread. "Some worlds are meant to collide, Ethan. Don't let fear win." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, knowing sleep wouldn't come easily tonight, not with the weight of his daughter's prayer hanging in the air. A gentle but powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest acts of love require the courage to let go of pride. The morning sun filtered through the dusty windows of Ethan's garage, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. He wiped his hands on a red shop rag, watching as Mr. Thompson, one of his oldest customers who disappeared during the scandal, pulled into the parking lot in his weathered pickup truck. "Morning, Ethan." Mr. Thompson called out, climbing down from his truck with a sheepish look. "Been having that rattling sound again. Nobody else seems to get it quite right like you do." Ethan nodded, keeping his face neutral despite the warmth spreading in his chest. "Let's take a look." As he popped the hood, more familiar faces began trickling back. Mrs. Chen from the flower shop brought her delivery van in, and old Bill Rogers showed up with his classic Mustang. Each carried an apologetic smile, and none mentioned the scandal that had driven them away weeks ago. The truth had come out about Jake Peterson, the rival mechanic who'd filed the false complaints. His own shop had been caught falsifying safety inspections, and now he faced criminal charges. The news spread through their small town like wildfire, and suddenly the whispers about Ethan changed their tone. "Always knew you were honest, son," Mr. Thompson said as Ethan finished with his truck. "Should have never listened to all that nonsense." Ethan just smiled faintly, focusing on the invoice. The words were kind, but they couldn't erase the memory of empty bays and hostile stares. He thought of Lily, who still asked about Miranda every night before bed. Later that afternoon, while updating his account books, his phone buzzed with a text from Jenny, Lily's teacher. "Just wanted you to know Lily's doing great with the new reading volunteer. She's really opening up." Ethan frowned. He hadn't heard about any new volunteer. Between keeping the garage afloat and making sure Lily was okay, maybe he'd missed a school notice. The next day, during his lunch break, he decided to swing by the school to check on Lily. The familiar hallways were decorated with fall artwork, paper leaves, and construction paper turkeys that made him smile despite his worries. As he approached Lily's classroom, he heard a warm, gentle voice reading aloud, and the little engine puffed harder and harder, saying, "I think I can. I think I can." His heart stopped. He knew that voice. Through the classroom window, he saw her. Miranda sat in a reading chair, wearing simple jeans and a sweater, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. She'd traded her designer clothes for something that wouldn't stand out in their working-class neighborhood. The children sat cross-legged around her, completely captivated. Lily beamed from her spot in the front row, proudly holding up her hand to answer questions about the story. She looked happier than she had in weeks. "Miss Mary," one of the kids called out, and Ethan realized Miranda was using a different name. "Can we hear another one?" Miranda's laugh was gentle, natural. "Maybe tomorrow. Remember what we said about patience?" The kids groaned playfully, and Ethan watched as she high-fived each one, including his daughter. This wasn't the polished CEO from magazine covers. This was the real Miranda, the one he'd glimpsed during quiet moments in his garage, the one who'd helped Lily with homework and shared coffee with him in paper cups. His hands clenched at his sides. Anger and longing warred in his chest, anger that she'd found a way to stay in their lives despite his attempts to protect Lily from more hurt, and longing because seeing her like this made his heart ache with possibilities. As if sensing his presence, Miranda looked up. Their eyes met through the classroom window. The story she'd been holding slipped slightly in her hands, but she caught it, professional mask sliding into place. Yet her eyes, they held such sadness and hope that Ethan had to look away first. He turned and walked quickly down the hall, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. Behind him, he could hear Miranda's voice resuming the story, steady and warm, as if their worlds hadn't just collided all over again. Back at the garage, he threw himself into work, trying to drown out his thoughts with the familiar sounds of tools and engines. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Miranda reading to those kids, saw how natural she looked, how much she clearly cared. She'd given up her designer clothes, her name, just to stay close to Lily. The afternoon sun slanted through the garage windows, casting long shadows across the floor. The Ferrari still sat in the corner, gathering dust under its cover. Ethan stared at it, remembering Miranda's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. "Keep my Ferrari. Just don't let go of my hand." But he had let go. He'd had to, hadn't he? A customer's arrival interrupted his thoughts, another familiar face returning. As Ethan rolled under the car to begin work, he realized his hands were shaking. The image of Miranda reading to Lily's class stayed with him, refusing to fade, a reminder of everything he'd pushed away in the name of protecting his daughter. The rest of the day passed in a blur of oil changes and tire rotations. Each time the door chimed, his heart jumped, though he knew Miranda wouldn't come to the garage. Not anymore, not after he'd pushed her away. When he picked Lily up from school later, she clutched a new book to her chest, her eyes bright. "Miss Mary said this one's special, Daddy. Can we read it tonight?" Ethan swallowed hard, recognizing the book as one he'd once mentioned to Miranda, his own childhood favorite. "Sure, sweetheart," he managed, his voice rough. "We can read it tonight." The manila envelope sat heavy on Ethan's workbench, its contents burning a hole in his conscience. He'd found it stuffed in his mailbox that morning, no return address, just his name scrawled in hurried handwriting. Now, under the harsh fluorescent lights of his garage, the documents inside told an ugly story he couldn't ignore. Bank statements, emails, a paper trail leading straight from Jason Cooper, owner of Cooper's Auto 2 towns over, to the state inspector who'd tried to shut down Ethan's shop. The evidence was clear as day. Cooper had paid thousands to target Ethan's business. Ethan ran his fingers through his hair, leaving traces of grease he didn't notice. The proof he needed had fallen right into his lap, but the timing couldn't be worse. Going public would mean reporters, questions, and inevitably, Miranda's name dragged back into the mess. The headlines would start again, and this time, they might not stop until both their reputations were in tatters. His phone buzzed. Another text from Miranda, the 5th this week. He hadn't answered any of them. "Daddy?" Lily's voice echoed from the office doorway. "Can we order pizza tonight?" Ethan quickly slid the envelope under some invoices. "Sure, pumpkin. Just let me finish up here. Are you fixing the sad car today?" Lily pointed to Miranda's Ferrari, still parked in the corner under its dust cover. "Not today, sweetheart." The sight of that crimson paint beneath the gray cloth made his chest tight. Every morning he told himself he'd call the dealership to have it picked up. Every evening, he couldn't bring himself to do it. The shop's bell chimed as the front door opened. Ethan's heart stopped when he saw Miranda step inside, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual business attire. She looked smaller somehow, more human. "Hi," she said softly. Lily's face lit up. "Miranda!" She rushed forward but stopped short, remembering the distance of recent weeks. Miranda knelt down, arms open. "Come here, sweetie." Lily didn't hesitate, throwing herself into the embrace. Ethan's throat tightened. "Lily, why don't you go do your homework in the office?" "But, please, pumpkin." Lily's shoulders slumped, but she obeyed, giving Miranda one last squeeze before disappearing into the back. Silence filled the garage. Miranda stood, brushing dust from her knees. "You haven't been answering my calls." "Been busy," Ethan gestured vaguely at the cars around them. "Busy avoiding me, you mean?" She stepped closer, her eyes finding the covered Ferrari. "You kept it. Hadn't gotten around to returning it. That's not why." Miranda's voice was gentle but firm. "You know that's not why." Ethan's hands clenched. The envelope seemed to pulse beneath the invoices, demanding attention. "Why are you here, Miranda?" "Because I miss you." The simple honesty in her words made him look up. "Both of you. And because I'm tired of pretending I don't. You're bored. I don't care about the board." She took another step forward. "I never did. Not really. They threatened to remove me if I didn't cut ties with you. And you know what? Let them try. I built that company from nothing. I can do it again if I have to." Ethan shook his head. "You don't understand. I can't let you throw everything away. Not for what? For love?" The word hung in the air between them. Because that's what this is, Ethan. That's what it's been since that night at the gala when you looked at me like I was just a person, not a CEO or a headline. He turned away, unable to bear the truth in her eyes. His hand found the envelope, pulling it out. Look at this. Miranda took the documents, scanning them quickly. Her expression hardened. Cooper, I should have known. We can take this to the authorities, clear your name, and start the whole circus over again? The press will have a field day. CEO's romance leads to business scandal. They'll tear you apart. Let them. Miranda tossed the envelope aside. I'm not hiding anymore, Ethan. Not from them, not from you, and not from how I feel. A small noise made them both turn. Lily stood in the office doorway, homework forgotten. Her eyes were wide, brimming with hope and fear. Please don't leave us again, she whispered, running to Miranda. Please stay. Miranda caught her, holding her close. The sight hit Ethan like a physical blow, his daughter and this remarkable woman who'd crashed into their lives with all her strength and vulnerability. He couldn't deny it anymore, not with his heart threatening to burst from his chest. I missed you too, Miranda murmured into Lily's hair, her eyes meeting Ethan's over their embrace. So much. Ethan took a shaky breath. The wall he'd built between them crumbled, and for the first time in weeks, he felt like he could breathe again. Daddy? Lily's voice was muffled against Miranda's sweater. Can Miranda stay for pizza? The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning beyond dinner plans. Miranda waited, not pushing, letting him make the choice. In that moment, looking at them both, Ethan realized there was only one answer he could give. The polished marble lobby of Steel Motors headquarters felt like another world compared to Ethan's garage. His borrowed suit was too tight at the collar, and his hands felt rough and out of place. Lily, dressed in her Sunday best, squeezed his right hand while Miranda held his left, her touch steady and sure. You don't have to do this, Ethan whispered, watching shareholders and board members file past them into the main conference room. Their stares ranged from curious to openly hostile. Miranda turned to him, her usual corporate polish replaced by something softer, more real. She wore simple slacks and a white blouse instead of her signature power suits. Yes, I do. We do. Lily tugged at Ethan's hand. Daddy, you always say running away doesn't fix anything. Miranda smiled at that, and for a moment, Ethan saw what truly mattered, reflected in both their eyes. He straightened his shoulders and nodded. The conference room was packed. Rows of chairs faced a raised platform where the board members sat like judges. Camera flashes popped as Miranda led Ethan and Lily to seats in the front row. The board chairman, George Harrison, tapped his microphone. This emergency shareholder meeting will now come to order, Harrison announced, his voice clipped. The primary motion before us concerns the leadership of Steel Motors following recent controversies. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Miranda squeezed Ethan's hand one last time before standing. Instead of taking the podium, she remained on the floor, closer to the shareholders. Before you vote, she began, her voice clear but different from her usual CEO tone. I want to tell you a story about what Steel Motors really means. She gestured to Ethan and Lily. This man taught me something our profit margins and market reports never could. He showed me what dignity looks like. Not the kind that comes from corner offices or stock options, but the kind that comes from honest work and unwavering faith in doing what's right. Several board members shifted uncomfortably as Miranda continued. When I first met Ethan Miller, I was driving a Ferrari worth more than his entire garage. But he treated me with the same respect. He shows every customer who trusts him with their vehicle. No flattery. No angle, just integrity. She walked slowly along the front row, making eye contact with shareholders she'd known for years. We've built this company on luxury and exclusivity. We've measured success in dollars and market share. But what if we've been measuring the wrong things? Harrison cleared his throat. Miss Steele, this meeting is about leadership stability, not philosophy. This is about leadership, Miranda cut in, her voice stronger. It's about what kind of company we want to be. Ethan's garage doesn't just fix cars, it builds community. People trust him because he proves every day that he deserves that trust. She turned to face the board directly. You've seen the headlines. You've heard the rumors. But here's what you haven't heard. While we've been chasing quarterly profits, we've forgotten why people trust their vehicles, their family's safety, to certain brands over others. Lily suddenly stood up beside her father. Miranda smiled at her and continued. This little girl reminded me that leadership isn't about power, it's about responsibility. To our customers, our community, and our values. The room had grown completely still. Even the photographers had lowered their cameras. "I'm not asking you to choose between profit and principle," Miranda said. "I'm showing you how principle creates lasting value. Every person who brings their car to Ethan's garage comes back because they trust him. That's not a business strategy, that's a life lesson." She walked back to stand beside Ethan and Lily. "If you want to remove me as CEO because I refuse to cut ties with a man who reminded me what integrity looks like, go ahead. But know that you'll be voting against everything that could make this company truly great." The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then, from the back of the room, an elderly shareholder stood up. "I've owned stock in this company for 30 years, he said. "This is the first time I've been proud of more than just my returns." Others began standing too. A middle-aged woman near the front spoke up. "My father was a mechanic like Mr. Miller. He taught me that character matters more than credentials." Harrison tried to restore order, but the mood in the room had shifted. When the votes were finally tallied, the result was clear. Miranda would remain CEO, with a mandate to implement her new vision for the company. As the room erupted in applause, Ethan noticed Robert Cooper, the rival mechanic who'd tried to destroy his reputation, slipping toward the exit. But he wasn't worried about Cooper anymore. The truth had a way of coming out when you stood your ground. Miranda turned to him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. The three of them, Miranda, Ethan, and Lily, stood together as cameras flashed. No longer uncomfortable in the spotlight, they had nothing to hide and everything to be proud of. "The board has one more unanimous decision," Harrison announced, looking somewhat chagrined but resigned. "We're launching an internal investigation into the false claims against Mr. Miller's garage, and we'll be cooperating fully with state authorities regarding certain improper business practices that have come to light." Lily hugged Miranda's legs while Ethan watched the woman who had changed his life address the crowd one final time. She spoke not as a CEO defending her position, but as someone who had found something more valuable than corporate success. "Thank you for your trust," she said simply. "Now, let's build something that matters." The shareholders rose in a standing ovation. Among the applause and congratulations, Ethan felt a peace he hadn't known in months. He'd been so afraid of losing his place in the world that he'd almost missed finding a better one right here, with these two remarkable people beside him. The autumn sun cast long shadows through the open garage doors as Ethan worked under the hood of an old Chevy. The familiar scent of motor oil and the soft hum of tools felt right again. His garage had come alive once more, filled with the steady stream of customers who'd returned after the truth came out. Mr. Jenkins, who owned the hardware store down the street, cleared his throat as he approached. His weathered face showed remorse. "Ethan, I owe you an apology. We all do. Shouldn't have listened to those rumors." Ethan straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Water under the bridge, Tom. No, it needs saying." Mr. Jenkins shuffled his feet. "You've always been good to this community. Fixed my truck more times than I can count, never overcharged. We were wrong to doubt you." More neighbors started dropping by throughout the morning. Mrs. Peterson brought her famous apple pie. Old Bill from the diner offered free lunch coupons. Each came with kind words and apologetic smiles. The sound of tires on gravel announced Miranda's arrival. She pulled up in her Ferrari, but instead of her usual business attire, she wore jeans and a simple t-shirt. Grease stains marked the knees of her pants, evidence of her weekend apprenticeship under Ethan's patient teaching. "Ready for another lesson?" she called out, grabbing a toolbox with practiced ease. Ethan couldn't help but smile. Here was the CEO of Steel Motors, choosing to spend her Saturday learning how to change spark plugs and check transmission fluid. The sight still amazed him. "You're getting better," he said, as she joined him at the workbench. "Almost as good as Lily with the socket wrench." Miranda laughed, the sound echoing through the garage. "High praise, considering your daughter's natural talent." They worked side by side, Miranda asking questions, Ethan explaining each step. The easy rhythm of their partnership felt as natural as breathing. Customers would do double takes seeing Miranda steal in work clothes, but her genuine interest in learning and her warm interactions soon won them over. During a quiet moment, as they shared coffee on the old couch in the break room, Miranda traced the rim of her cup. "You know, I used to think success meant corner offices and board meetings, but there's something about this place. The honesty of the work, the real connections with people. It's not glamorous," Ethan said, watching her carefully. "No, it's better." She set down her cup. "It's authentic. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm playing a role. I'm just me." Lily burst in from school, her backpack bouncing. "Dad, Miranda!" She hugged them both, not caring about the grease stains. "Can we have pizza tonight? Please? Only if you finish your homework first, Ethan said, smoothing her hair. I'll help, Miranda offered, following Lily to the small office where they'd set up a homework station. Ethan watched them through the office window, Miranda pointing at math problems, Lily's face scrunched in concentration. The sight stirred something deep in his chest, a warmth he'd thought was lost forever. Later, as the sun began to set, they closed up the garage together. Miranda helped Ethan organize tools while Lily drew pictures at her desk. I haven't felt this kind of peace in years, Ethan admitted quietly, placing a wrench back in its spot. After Sarah died, I thought I had to do everything alone, prove I could handle it. Miranda touched his arm gently. And now? He turned to face her. Now I realize it's okay to let someone in, to trust again. His voice grew softer. You changed everything, Miranda, not because of your money or your company, but because of who you are. I was so lost in my world of corporate politics, Miranda said. Always watching my back, never truly connecting with anyone. She gestured around the garage. This place, you and Lily, you gave me a home I never knew I needed. The evening light painted everything in soft gold. Through the office window, Lily pretended to focus on her drawing, but her eyes kept darting their way, a knowing smile on her face. Ethan stepped closer to Miranda, his heart racing. Thank you for not giving up on us. Never, Miranda whispered. Their first kiss was gentle, a moment years in the making. All the doubt, all the struggle, all the pain, it melted away in that simple touch. From the office, they heard Lily's delighted giggle, but neither pulled away. In that moment, in the humble setting of a small-town garage, two worlds that once seemed impossibly far apart found their meeting point, and it felt exactly right. Lily's continued giggles finally made them break apart, both smiling. Through the window, she gave them an enthusiastic thumbs up, her homework completely forgotten in the excitement of the moment. The crisp morning air filled the garage as Ethan polished the crimson Ferrari that had started it all. His weathered cloth moved in gentle circles across the hood, each stroke bringing out a deeper shine. The car had sat quietly in the corner these past weeks, a reminder of both pain and possibility. He heard the click of heels on concrete and looked up to see Miranda walking in, dressed casually in jeans and a soft blue sweater. Her presence still made his heart skip, but now it was comfort rather than anxiety that filled him. You're here early, he said, straightening up with a smile. I wanted to catch you before the morning rush. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. I have something for you. Ethan's brow furrowed as he wiped his hands on a shop rag. Miranda, you don't need to. Just open it, she said softly, pressing the envelope into his palm. Inside was a single piece of paper, the title to the Ferrari, with his name typed in clean black letters. Ethan stared at it, then back at Miranda, his mouth opening but no words coming out. Before you say no, Miranda held up her hand. This isn't payment for anything. It's a symbol. She stepped closer, taking his rough hands in hers. You know what I've learned these past months? Cars aren't meant to sit still. They're built to move forward. Her eyes held his, full of warmth. Just like us. Miranda, I can't accept. Keep the Ferrari, she whispered, squeezing his hands. But don't let go of my hand. That's all I ask. The sound of running feet interrupted them as Lily burst through the door, her backpack bouncing. Dad, you're supposed to drive me to school today, remember? Miranda's eyes sparkled. Actually, I was thinking we could all go for a drive first, if that's okay with your dad? Ethan looked between them, his daughter's hopeful face and the woman who had changed their lives in ways he never expected. He felt something settle in his chest, like the final piece of an engine clicking perfectly into place. Well, he said, pulling the Ferrari's keys from his pocket, I suppose we could take the scenic route. Lily's squeal of delight echoed through the garage as she scrambled into the back seat. Miranda slid into the passenger side while Ethan settled behind the wheel, the leather seat familiar now in a way it hadn't been before. The engine purred to life, and Ethan guided the car onto the street. Lily pressed her face against the window, waving at passing neighbors who smiled and waved back. The hostility that had once divided their community had melted away, replaced by understanding and support. They drove through town, past the school where Miranda had read stories to Lily's class, past the diner where they'd shared countless cups of coffee, past the park where they'd walked on weekends. Each place held memories now, stepping stones that had led them here. Lily's laughter filled the car as Ethan took a curve, the Ferrari handling it with elegant precision. He glanced at Miranda, who was watching him with such tenderness it made his throat tight. Can we stop at the park? Lily asked from the back seat. Please? Ethan checked his watch. They had time. He pulled into the parking lot, and before the car had fully stopped, Lily was bouncing in her seat. The morning sun painted everything in gold as they got out. Lily immediately ran ahead toward the playground, her pigtails flying. Ethan reached for Miranda's hand without thinking, their fingers intertwining naturally. They walked slowly behind Lily, their steps in perfect sync. The path curved ahead of them, dappled with sunshine filtering through the trees. Ethan felt Miranda's thumb brush across his knuckles, a gesture so simple yet full of meaning. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me. The real me. Not just the mechanic or the single dad." But he trailed off, searching for words. "Just Ethan," she finished for him. "The man who taught me that true worth isn't measured in stock prices or luxury brands." She squeezed his hand. "The man who showed me what real strength looks like." Ahead of them, Lily's voice carried back as she discovered something exciting on the playground. Her joy was infectious, pure, and untainted by the adult world's complications. Miranda leaned her head against Ethan's shoulder as they walked. "You know what makes this Ferrari special now?" "What's that?" "It's not about status anymore. It's about family, about trust, about moving forward together." Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest. The Ferrari that had once symbolized the gap between their worlds now represented their bridge across it. Every mile they'd drive would be a reminder that love could overcome any obstacle, that faith could rebuild what doubt had broken. They followed Lily's path through the park, their joined hands swinging gently between them. The morning light caught Miranda's hair, turning it to gold, and Ethan marveled at how natural this felt. Walking together, sharing the simple joy of a morning in the park, building a future, one step at a time. The chaos of the past months had refined their bond like steel in a forge, making it stronger, more resilient. Every test had only proved what they'd known in their hearts, that some connections were meant to last, meant to grow, meant to carry you forward into better days. Lily's voice called out to them from the playground ahead, bright with excitement and possibility. They walked on, hand in hand, their steps sure and steady on the path before them, their hearts beating in time with the rhythm of newfound hope. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Miller, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.